let's talk about a 33 card commander deck that's going to change the way that you build decks forever. Now I imagine your first thought is, what do you mean, Brother Frog? Commander decks are like 99 cards. Well, not this one. You'll see why soon enough, and why a 33 card deck is going to be the best one in your collection. But before we get there, let's talk about the origins of this 33 card miracle deck. I was having a conversation with someone in the comments of my last video where I talked about deck templates and the construction of a mathematically sound commander deck. We had a brief exchange about limited 40 card formats, and it got me thinking. With how many commander players come straight into Magic via commander these days, rather than 60 or 40 card formats, this means that many Magic the Gathering players aren't learning a lot of the arguably critical play and deck building lessons that one learns by playing limited or standard. One of the best things about building a deck with less cards, whether that's a pre-release or in a draft, is how little flexibility you have. Your deck has to be built around a very specific focus or it simply doesn't work. You just don't have the real estate for it. Every card in your deck has a high impact, and when your curve is a little too high, or you don't have enough card advantage, or you don't have enough lands, you feel it immediately and constantly. Unlike in Commander, your deck simply doesn't have 60 other cards or 10 mulligans to hide behind. And this led me to thinking, imagine if Commander decks were only 40 cards. This would make deck building so much simpler. So, enter the 33 card Commander deck. In the average game, most of us draw about a third of the way into our deck. So I thought, if we want our deck to do a certain thing really well, why not just make a 33 card deck? Then, fine-tune it to perfection and replicate it as best as possible 2 more times with other cards. So, what I'm going to do is take one of my most well-known decks and apply this logic to it. And I'm going to walk you through the process so you can replicate it yourself with either your favorite decks or your new brews, and I'll give you my main takeaways at the end. I've talked about my Sauron Spellslinger deck a bunch on my channel, but it's been a while since I've reviewed it for any changes, so I thought what better way to test out this theory than on the Dark Lord himself. To start this process, like any good deck building or review process, I'm going to look at what I want my deck to do, and then the types of cards I need to make good on that plan. In the early game, I really want to be hitting my land drops, and ideally I want 2 sources of ramp so that I can play Sauron on turn 4 or at the latest turn 5. Beyond that, the goal is to hide behind my ever-growing Orc army over the next 3 to 4 turns till I can start threatening someone's life total via either evasion or flinging my Orc army at them. This is after all a Grixis pseudo-control deck, so naturally I want some removal, some counter magic, and on top of that I want cards that cause the ring to tempt me so I can take advantage of Sauron's wheel effect, with some flashback cards thrown in for good measure to make the wheeling less punishing. Let's break this down further to look at the actual cards the strategy translates into. Across the game, ideally I want to draw 3 sources of card draw, 1 way to copy spells, 1 way to grow my Orc army more quickly, a fling effect, 3 single target removal sources, a ring tempt source, a source of evasion, a cost reducer, a board wipe, a counterspell, a graveyard recursion source, and enough mana acceleration and lands to power all of these spells. Speaking of power, a word from our sponsor, the Super Mega Base Frog. He wants you to pound the sub and like buttons, because 80% of my regular viewers aren't subbed. Word on the street is, I have to get to 100,000 subs to be Australia's biggest Magic creator and mega internet superstar frog. So get in on the ground floor, and you can say you were a member of the base frog department long before it was cool. Okay, with all that in mind, let's take a look at how my 99 card Sauron deck splits out into my 33 card versions. The first thing I noticed is that in certain places, I didn't have exact splits for how many cards I actually needed across the 3 decks. I needed a land here, a source of mana ramp there, and an extra spell or 2 like a counterspell. I also realized that I had some one-offs in the deck, like an Archmage Emeritus, and while it's a great card, I didn't necessarily want it in the deck because it wasn't part of my core focus. Another good byproduct of splitting the deck into 3 like this was how easy it was to spot trends across the deck, like cards that allow the ring to tempt me. Previously, I threw a bunch in that fit the theme, but this really helped me identify how many I have, and thus how likely I am to draw them. And this is equally as useful for my cards with flashback. Then lastly, doing this test gave me clarity on what I wanted my deck to do, even more so than when I originally built it and spent a lot of time on it. This made me really think about some of the cards that I'd previously liked, like Exalted Flamer of Tzeentch. Thinking about this streamlined game plan made me realize that while he's a great value engine, what I really needed was specific recursion. Overall, I'm really surprised and impressed by how useful this exercise was, given it was a brand new idea and something that I hadn't done before. I took a deck list that I was pretty happy with, and one that I thought was fairly solved, but it turns out that it wasn't, and I'm not sure that I would have made these changes if I hadn't done this exercise. More importantly, why should you do this? These are the reasons that I would build a 33 card based deck. Deck building can be very complicated and confusing for even the most seasoned players among us. Hell, clearly even for me, given I ended up making changes because of it, and I'm not too proud to admit that. Cutting down your deck like this will give you focus on clarity on your game plan that you can't really get otherwise. For newer players, it can be absolutely overwhelming to try and deck build, and making the problem smaller and more focused and limiting what's likely to happen in a single game makes everything so much more tangible rather than esoteric. This 33 card deck also makes it much easier to both come up with a new concept and then test it a bunch by either goldfishing or even giving it a trial run with your friends. A test that, because of less variance with only 33 cards, will really show you how your core game plan will play out in the ideal game much more quickly and reliably. Lastly, I think many think they want randomness in Commander, when what they really want is uniqueness. They want to be a silly goose doing silly goose things, but being a silly goose is only cool if you can reliably be a goose and not a pigeon. That really cool deck or interaction is only cool if you can make it happen somewhat reliably, and you don't want to be that person doing their best peaked in high school impersonation that's telling the table how crazy the deck was this one game, when in reality their deck hasn't done that thing for a year. Using this method of constructing a deck is going to make your deck one incredibly reliable, yet possibly silly goose. It's definitely a tool that I'm going to use on all my other decks and for new builds that I start. And I think that very quickly, this will become a key part of the process that I use to build the base decks that the channel is named after. Don't forget to be a silly goose yourself and stab the like and subscribe buttons, and let me know in the comments whether you'll be trying this and what you think. If you're new here and you like this, both of these videos will give you more base deck building advice that I think you'll enjoy. Lastly, I've dropped links to the Sauron deck as well as the basic spreadsheet I created as a template if you want to copy and use it. Enjoy, and as always, thank you for being here.